Hello, welcome to the Go Grab That Day podcast. It's a very hot Monday, Labour Day here in Auckland. Sweating my ass off. But anyway, we're going to get straight into the UFC 54 fight card. I've got a lot to get through, so I've kind of tried to narrow it all down as much as possible so I can talk a bit about how good the main event was, and yeah, there's a lot in between, but I gotta talk about Khabib and what he did. But anyway, yeah, getting straight into it. Hope everyone's okay. Hope you're enjoying life and enjoying lockdown. Some of you guys are stuck inside. Anyway, here we go. So first fight I'm going to talk about is Miranda Maverick versus Liana Jojua. Hope I pronounced that name right, because I seem to be butchering them lately. But yeah, I just wanted to pick this fight up because two newbies. This fight was on the early prelims, which were, I think they started at 2 o'clock in the morning here. Why Dana White, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, in particular I wanted to talk about Miranda Maverick because her striking looked really good. She was, supposedly had a pretty good record outside of the UFC. I didn't know her until this fight, but the fight was stopped by it was doctor stoppage, I think, in between the first and second round. You could argue that maybe it shouldn't have been stopped, but you know, they have to look out for the safety of the fighters. But like, Maverick's striking was really cool to watch. Pretty cool name as well, you know, for promotional terms. But yeah, she caught as Joshua stepped in. She caught her with like a step in elbow. It was really cool to see. Completely sliced her open on her nose. A lot of blood, but she was okay. It didn't look like the nose was broken. I'm not 100% about that, but I think the doctor said his reasoning for stopping it was that they couldn't stop the blood flow in between rounds, which is understandable. Maybe could have let it go, but I don't know. Regardless, she was losing that fight anyway. Maverick looked like her stand-up was much better. She was really confident for a girl making her debut. She was super confident with her striking. Her movement was really cool, and it's for someone like I love to see elbows. I love to see kind of. I don't think they're used as much anymore, especially outside of ground and pound. You don't see guys just step in nice with elbows like that, and it's good to see. Yeah, I like to see it was a great finish. That's why I wanted to mention that again. I don't know a lot about their background. I do know, hearing the commentary, that Miranda Maverick had recently, sometime this year, had actually fought 3 fights in one night. I don't know what division that, or what organisation that was, because there's not many that do that anymore. But stupidly, for some reason, it was only recognised as 1 pro fight in the night. It's ridiculous. I don't understand why that is, but it goes to show how tough she is when you can do 3 fights in one night. You don't hear of that anymore since, you know, the Pride days. But yeah, she's one I'll keep an eye out for. Again, a pretty cool name. But her striking there is really nice to watch. I don't know what her ground game or anything like that is like, but I think she's had some. I think she finished her first fight, or her fight to get into the UFC, I think, via submission, but not 100%. Anyway, she's one to keep an eye out for. Just a small bit on that fight. I wanted to give her a little bit of recognition for such a good finish, but yeah, it's a nasty cut on Jojua's nose. Again, the stoppage is debatable, but I'll let you guys decide that. Next fight we're going to talk about Smiling Sam Alvey versus Jung. It was a very fun fight. Like a lot of Alvey's fights, they are very good to watch. Sorry, now I'm just trying to get the results up here. The fight finished a draw. Fair enough. I kind of thought Alvey won the first and second round, but like all of his fights, it was fun. It was back and forth. He got hit and he gave some hits. I think, I was talking to one of my friends back home saying this, I think if Alvey early in the fight had changed his rhythm a little bit, he could have won it. Like, Jung was putting all the pressure, constantly pressuring him, constantly closing him off, but never did anything with it. Sam Alvey has always been fun to watch. Even I've seen him, you know, he appeared on The Ultimate Fighter. He was my MMA brain. I think he fought under. He was on the season. Roy Nelson and Shane My God, why won't his name come to me? And he appeared on the Ultimate Fighter season under, I think he was on Shane Carwin's team. Shane Carwin's team versus Roy Nelson. But yeah, he's always been fun to watch. It's just he takes a lot of shots, and I think he could have won this fight. He kept landing 1-2s. 1-2s. It was always a 1-2, and then he'd change it a little bit. He'd go, he'd lead with the right hand, 1-2, and then follow with the uppercut. And when he did that, he landed, but he'd go back to the 1-2. Same thing, 1-2, and it became predictable. It's just my opinion. If he changed the rhythm a little bit, I think he could have caught Jung a bit more, because Jung just kept pressuring, taking shots, and eventually later in the fight, I think it was the end of the second round or maybe the start of the third, Jung caught him with a nice elbow as well. Nice heavy elbow. And then he kept kind of doing that, kept trying to land like shots at close range, which changed the fight a little bit. Again, I still think Alvey won, but the draw was fair enough too. But it was just, because I kind of wanted to see Alvey win. I wish he changed his rhythm just a little bit, kind of midway through the first or even midway through the second round. Just changed it a little bit, added a little extra to his shots. Just changed the 1-2 a little bit, maybe some more feints. I don't know. I just thought he could have maybe finished that fight. Jung, with all the pressure he put on, he didn't do enough. Later in the fight he did, obviously, to make it a draw, but because he was putting so much pressure, getting Alvey to back up all the time, maybe if he added a little more or threw some more shots, it could have been, he could have got something out of the fight too. But again, it was a fun fight to watch. It was enjoyable. Like all of Sam Alvey's fights, they're fun. He gets hit, he hits you, and he's super heavy handed. But draw, probably a fair result. Had I guessed, I would have thought Alvey got it, but a draw is probably a fair result. So moving on from that one, we got a really good fight was Casey Kenny versus Nathaniel Wood. I believe this got fight of the night, which rightly so. Again, Casey Kenny is another fighter who's really, really interesting to watch. He's very, very well rounded. Massive, huge cardio. At the start of the fight, they had talked about how Wood had a bad weight cut, supposedly, and he did look bigger in the cage, but he didn't fight like he had a bad weight cut. His cardio seemed to be fine. I actually think his cardio pushed or showed to be a little better than Casey Kenny, who, that says a lot. But no, it's a really, really good fight, back and forth. Very close fight. Casey Kenny got the decision in the end, which I agree with. Just think he was landing a little bit more. And then kind of in the around third round, maybe end of the second, Nathaniel Wood started to improve, started up his pressure a little bit. Looked like Casey Kenny just got a little bit tired. I don't want to even say tired, he just slowed down a little bit. But the pace of the whole fight was huge. But then as that happened, Nathaniel Wood was starting to land on Casey Kenny. He started to grapple. We slowed it down a bit again, and I think that's probably why he won the fight. But it was really good. Sorry, I was reading some of my notes. Yeah, Kenny's corner had kept kind of screaming at him, saying, give him nothing free. So basically every time Wood would throw a shot or he'd land a shot, Kenny would make sure he caught him with something. Every time he came in, make sure he caught him with something, and he did nearly every time. Wood was throwing some nice leg kicks throughout the whole fight. I think at one point he may have dropped Kenny, or it could be the other way around, I can't remember, but I know he was hitting him with some big leg kicks. And Nathaniel Wood, if you guys remember, Brad Pickett, now retired, that's who Nathaniel Wood's head coach is. There's a British fighter in the UFC a few years ago in the same weight class, I think. But I think did they fight at a catchweight? Yeah, that's the bantamweight division. But they fought at a catchweight, but both in the bantamweight division, which is, man, that's some division. I like Casey Kenny. I think he's a very, very tough fighter for anybody. And from in his last few fights, he just seems to be getting a little bit better each time. Puts on some very interesting fights all the time, and just tough dude. So that's a good result, because Nathaniel Wood is a good fighter too. But maybe not a good sign if he's missing weight. He looks quite big too, so he may have to step up in weight eventually, but I don't know. It was a good fight, definitely earned fight of the night anyway. You can't argue there. So next we have, moving through pretty quick, I want to spend a bit more time talking on the main event and the co-main, but mostly the main event. So moving next to Tai Tuivasa Bam Bam versus Stefan Skyscraper Struve. This is a good fight too. Happy to see Tai Tuivasa back. I know the UFC had cut him, but I think he's a good fighter. He's very entertaining as a character outside of. For anyone that hasn't watched him, he's listened to some of his interviews, or I think he has a podcast, a half-cast podcast, I think it's called. And it's very good. He's a funny guy. The height difference in this fight was unbelievable. Stefan Struve is, I think he's just shy 7 foot. Tai Tuivasa is human size, so he looked much bigger, but did exactly what he had to do, like get inside on Stefan Struve and just try and land shots over the top. But even as he was trying to swing over top, he was like reaching up. It was so hard to catch him, but he did really well. He pushed him up against the cage. He kind of marched in with heavy overhands to try and force him up against the cage, and then when he did, he kept him there, and it paid off. He'd done it a few times, and he was pushing Struve's head up, or his chin up with his head, landing some nice overhands over his head. And then caught him with a clean uppercut. Just caught him right on the end of the punch, which folded Struve, and then he landed some ground upon. It was a good finish. It's a big name too, not just in height, but big name in general for Tuivasa. So it's good to see him back in the win column in the UFC. And actually, I think he won his last fight too. But yeah, I know they had cut him, and it's good to see him back. I think he deserves it. And Daniel Cormier was saying during the fight or just before the fight, that Tuivasa had been kind of, before the world went into lockdown of this fucking coronavirus, that Tuivasa had been working on his wrestling. They've been working with the guys over with DC and all of his team over at AKA, and I think he'd been working with DC's wrestling team privately as well to improve that too. So it's good to see, and he definitely looks like he's lost a bit of weight. So makes the cut to heavyweight. I don't even think he has a cut to heavyweight. Which is good. He's obviously, he's being smart, he's taking better care of his body. You add that to his interest in fights and his interest in character. It's good to see him back. It's hard to see who he can fight next. I just hope they don't, ease him back into it, before you go giving him whatever, top 3. But the only problem with heavyweight is the names aren't that big there, and it's not that deep a division, or if it is deep, it's not, the talent is not great there. But then once you hit, top 5, top 6 guys, you've got, I think Alistair Overeem is number 5, so you're looking at really big names and really talented fighters. But I'd like to see Tuivasa build his way back up to getting some of the big names, the really big names, because he's still, he's experienced, but he says himself he's young in the MMA game, so good win for him. I am happy to see him back, and looking forward to his next fight. Okay, where are we on to next? Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes beside me here. I feel like a reporter. So now we're moving on to the main card. Some of these I kind of skimmed through. I'm going to talk about the Walt Harris and Volkov fight. Skip past. No. Ankalev had a win against Kudalaba. There was a bit of bad blood between them boys. I think that fight, they tried to make that 3 times. It was a rematch, and they tried to make it 3 times. I think he kept falling through. But good win for Magomed Ankalaev. I think he won in the first round, early in the first round, so it was a good finish. He got a bonus for that too. Skimming through, Lauren Murphy got a win. She's in Shevchenko's division, so good luck with that. Phil Haas had a win. Good finish actually, but I'm going to move on, skip them, go on to the Volkov and Walt Harris fight. I suppose everybody, I was kind of pulling for Walt Harris in this fight after the shitty past couple of years he's had with the death of his stepdaughter. I'm sure everyone knows that story, but yeah, obviously, how can you not hope he wins? But like the UFC are not giving him an easy run of it, which they can't. Like he's ranked high, so they gotta give him tough fights. But it's just a shame because I'm sure, I don't know where his mind is at, or regards fighting, how focused he is. But I would like to see him get a few wins and get back into the dangerous Walt Harris we had seen previously. But it was a tough fight. Like his last fight was Overeem, I think, and now, or was that his last fight? I think his last fight was Overeem, and then he fights Volkov now, which is a tough fight. Volkov's probably one of the best heavyweight strikers out there. And for a big guy, he's very measured in the way he strikes, and a very smart striker. But yeah, like it was a nice body shot to finish Walt Harris. A sickening body shot, actually, right into the solar plexus. Like, but it was a good finish for Volkov. Dangerous fighter for anybody. I know he called out a few names, but he mentioned Rosenstrike, which I think is an interesting fight. That kind of that power versus, I know Volkov has power too, like, but he's much more measured and kind of much better timing than Rosenstrike. Whereas Rosenstrike just swings these big shovels to try and take your head off. But yeah, that'd be an interesting fight. That would be the one I'd like to see. I'd like to see him fight Rosenstrike. It's hard not to mention his new tattoo. Jesus, there's some detail in it. Anyone that hasn't seen it, have a look at it. The detail is class. Whoever his artist is deserves whatever he got paid. But regards Harris, I don't know, maybe it'd be nice to see Walt Harris either take a bit of time off, or maybe the UFC feed him some smaller names. It'd be nice to see. But I hope they give him a bit of time. That's 2 in a row he's lost. Sometimes you hit 3 in a row, you're looking at being cut a lot of the time. But I just hope the UFC give him a bit of time. He deserves that after all he's been through, and from what I hear, he's been pretty easy to deal with for the UFC. So maybe a bit of time off. Maybe in the middle of next year, give him some smaller names, let him earn his way back up the division. Walt Harris probably wouldn't want that himself. He probably wants the big names, but it's just tough on him with all he's been through. But no, good win for Volkov all the same. And the game has got to move on regardless. But yeah, I'd like to see Harris get some smaller names and build his confidence and stuff up again. Anyway, moving along. Co-main event, you got Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. This was a good fight too. I did kind of expect Whittaker to win, because he's looked very good. Since the loss to Adesanya, he fought Darren Till. He looked really good in that fight, and he seems to have improved since that loss. But yeah, he just looked better in every sense of the game. Cannonier wasn't bad. Just Whittaker looked just a little bit better. His movement, the way he was bridging the gap, the jab, was really cool to see. I don't know what. I think he deserves another title shot against Adesanya, but I can understand why Izzy would refuse it, because he beat him so well in the last fight. But who else does he fight? He can't take Cannonier. Cannonier lost, and this was supposed to be the fight to earn a title shot. So you might just see Adesanya step up to light heavyweight. I don't know. I'd spoke about that on a previous podcast. I think Whittaker deserves another shot. At the end of the day, right now he is the second best in the division. I don't see anyone else beating Whittaker, if I'm being honest, other than Adesanya. So he deserves that shot. It's mad. He is such a good fighter to watch. Movement and all is really good. He has a bit of everything in his game. But I don't know, does he beat Adesanya? I think as much as Whittaker is better than Cannonier at almost everything, I think Adesanya is better than Whittaker at almost everything. So maybe you get the shot. I don't know. That will come down to Adesanya and the UFC. Although Dana did say in the press conference afterwards that he thinks that'd be a good fight to make again. So I don't know. See how easy Adesanya would be to convince to do it. Because Whitaker deserves that shot. Just see what'll happen. He's kind of admitted himself he doesn't mind taking a bit of time, taking a bit of time away, time off, and then see what the UFC decide. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Great win for. I think Cannonier came out and said that early in the first round he broke something in his arm or fractured something in his arm. So I'm sure that had an effect on him. But I still think Whitaker just looked better all round. One of the things I love that he does, DC said it on the commentary as well. Whitaker throws a 1-2, and after his right hand, he follows immediately with the right leg, but the right hand almost blocks that coming over. And he was so close with it a few times. And he caught Cannonier. That's what rocked Cannonier eventually, but it's the way he throws the right hand and then almost immediately the right leg comes behind it. It's so hard to kind of predict, and it was really cool to see. But yeah, great win for Whitaker. Yeah, he got caught late. Like Cannonier did catch him late and rock him a little bit. I think it was with a stiff jab. But regardless, to me, Whitaker looked the best throughout the entire fight. Like I thought he would. So we'll see what happens next for him. The annoying thing is I had said this previously. This is going to be the annoying thing for Adesanya. Is he's going to either have to keep cleaning out and maybe refighting guys or fighting guys that are, a few places away from even deserving a shot, or else he's going to have to move up. So we'll see what he decides. I suppose it's a good position for him to be in, but it's got to be annoying too to try and get up for these fights, or have to force your way up to light heavyweight. But he's done it before. He's fought kickboxing, he's fought heavyweight, so we shall see. Good win for Bobby Knuckles. Okay, so moving on to the small matter of the main event, Khabib versus Gaethje. Wow, what can I really say other than how good is Khabib? I had kind of leaned in a prediction to Gaethje, but I'm not surprised that Khabib has won. It's just unbelievable that all these, not just Gaethje, but all these other fighters, talk about McGregor, Poirier, whoever, go down through the list, they train to know what Khabib is going to do. They know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to strike you to set up his takedown. Nobody can stop it. It's unreal that none of these guys can stop it. I remember, I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but if I did, oops. I remember Luke Rockhold talking, I think he was talking on another podcast, it was on Brendan Schaub's podcast, about, anytime he's ever wrestled with lightweights or welterweights, he said it's easy for him. He said he can pin them down, because Rockhold is probably a natural light heavyweight or heavyweight, but, has fought at both light heavyweight and middleweight. He said when Khabib wrestles him, he said he just doesn't know how it is, but he is super strong. That he gives him big problems. Same with DC and all these guys. They've all said that Khabib is, for his size, he's got unnatural strength. And it shows in the fights. That when he gets the guy down, they look like they just cannot move. They can't get up. They can't get him off the top. And they all know what he's going to do. He ties up your legs using his legs. He does what they call the Dagestani handcuff, where he traps your wrist. They all know he's going to do it. They cannot stop it, no matter what. But there's a couple of things about this fight is Khabib's pressure, which he does in a lot of fights anyway. But it just made, like it does with a lot of other fighters, it made Gaethje so uncomfortable. Because obviously he's got Gaethje's so used to walking guys down even when he's getting hit. But he, like it or not, as good a wrestler as Gaethje is, he still had to think about Khabib's wrestling. And you saw that in the fight, that he had such a low stance. Every time he'd move, he'd bob real low down, and it was dangerous at points, because if Khabib had good knees or a good head kick, he could have dropped him. And he tried it a couple of times at knees. But yeah, Gaethje was so focused on his wrestling. And Khabib wasn't afraid to strike with Gaethje. not at all. He's spent most of the fight striking, but he does that. He does do that to set up his takedown anyway. It's just his pressure, constant walking at you, hitting you, just constantly swinging at you. You know, not that he was really faking the takedown, but you know it's there. The threat is there at some point. Gaethje just looked completely off rhythm. And there's one thing people have to stop doing. It's not that Gaethje didn't show up. Gaethje showed up. Gaethje was prepared, well prepared. You don't hear any excuses from him after the fight. He did show up. He was beaten by a better guy. He was beaten by the GOAT. I've had many arguments kind of against Khabib. He's irritated me in ways. But there is no denying that he is, if not the greatest of all time, he has to be in that argument and that debate. You know, forget about like, you look at some of these guys like John Jones, who's got some controversies in his past. It's a tough word to say. Controversy in his past. Gaethje has none, or Khabib has none, bar like maybe struggling with weight at times. I know people were saying though the build up to this fight it looked like, you know, he missed weight. There's a lot of videos being shared about that. I don't know, is that true either? I mean, if that's the case, then the whole game is fixed. But even if he did, does it make a difference? You know, whether he makes weight, whether he misses weight, he's better. He's better than anyone else in that division. People talk, you know, maybe a fully fit McGregor could come back and do it. And I can see that argument too. But at the same time, McGregor got his chance. If he wasn't fully fit, that's his fault. You know, he was going against Khabib, and it's not like it was a different Khabib. Khabib was the greatest then too. So yeah, I suppose you'll always have that argument. But he's so good. He is so good. It's unbelievable. He just didn't care to strike, and when he took him down I think he took him down the first time he took him down. Like, I know Gaethje got out of it, and it was the end of the round, so that's probably the only reason he survived. But they just can't move from underneath. He just controls people so well. He looks like he's a heavyweight almost when he's on top of the lightweights. They can't get out of it. And he nearly had Justin in a submission after the first takedown. One thing is, Justin Gaethje's leg kicks were definitely doing damage. I actually wish the commentators had talked more about that, because I think Khabib's leg was a lot worse than he let on, and then whether they didn't notice or they just, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but my opinion was his leg looked really bad. I think Gaethje was one or two good hard leg kicks away from putting Khabib in big trouble, or at least slowing him down, not giving him the power to do the takedown. But no point in talking about that, but his leg was definitely worse. I think even at the end of the first round, when he was walking back, I could even spot he looked like he was a little tentative on the leg. Obviously that doesn't matter, but it's just to give Gaethje a bit of props for, he was landing some really hard leg kicks. But no, I don't believe in that kind of, oh, Gaethje didn't show up. He showed up. He showed up with his best game. It just wasn't good enough. It's plain and simple, he wasn't good enough to beat Khabib. I did, like in my last podcast, I predicted that maybe there were certain things I was looking at with Khabib's father, maybe the fact he was talking about GSP and overlooking Gaethje, that might be why he loses. I was wrong. But, you know, these aren't solid predictions I'm making. It was just my theory. I want to kind of put it down to, if I had to guess, I would have thought Gaethje could have done it. But, hey, Khabib is just too good. He's too good. I'd said previously, I made the argument that Tony Ferguson could probably beat him. When you see what he, like, I know MMA math doesn't really work, but when you see that, you know, Gaethje dismantled Tony Ferguson, and you look at what Khabib did to Gaethje, say like MMA math doesn't work, but because Khabib is doing the exact same thing to every guy, you kind of have to take it into account. They can't stop it. Ferguson's submissions might have been a little bit dangerous, but not. I have to stop getting off topic and stay on this fight. But I just think, I know he's retired now, but it's time. Like even myself, I thought there would be someone to eventually beat him, but he's the GOAT. He's the lightweight GOAT. There's no There's no discussion. You can go back to guys like BJ Penn and all these previous great fighters. There's nobody out there like Khabib, and we'll probably never see a fighter like him again. Like he completely neutralised Justin Gaethje's game with pressure, and Gaethje with the fear of the takedown, having to defend it, having to be ready to defend it, because knowing you only get, one or two chances of defending it. And Khabib says that. He says, I'm going to take you down. If I don't get it, I'm going to take you down again. I said, I'm going to keep taking you down until I get it. And that's it. They just cannot stop it. It's insane. Whatever they're doing in Dagestan or whatever kind of wrestling his father put him through, there's nobody that wrestles like him. You can talk about GSP, and I'll kiss GSP's ass all day. He's the reason I'm into the sport, but I actually want to know, would GSP even stand a chance against Khabib? I don't think, obviously we're never going to see that now. It'd be great to see it, GOAT versus GOAT. But no, I don't even know. I don't even know could GSP. Like, look, I was listening to Luke Thomas' podcast a little bit earlier. I didn't think of this, but Khabib has never been dropped. He's never been dropped hard. He's never been cut properly in his professional career, which is insane for a guy you're talking about who's the GOAT. You see the strikers he's fought, from people like Edson Barboza to Poirier to Gaethje to McGregor. Fantastic strikers, and he's never even been dropped. So there is no discussion. There's no GSP. There's no, what Ferguson would do. You're looking at the greatest. And the fact he retired, I suppose it's kind of a shame that he's retired. But I mean, who does he fight? Like, who does he fight? I know people said the rematch against McGregor, but he beat McGregor pretty decisively. There is all the talk about how McGregor was partying in the build up to that fight, and he wasn't, really ready. The game plan wasn't the right game plan. It's their fault, That's down to McGregor. Where was his discipline, And this is coming from a McGregor fan. I wanted to see McGregor beat Khabib. I still wanted to see McGregor beat Khabib, but these are like silly discussions as well about, fully fit McGregor. That's his fault. He should have been fit. He's a professional fighter. And you gotta look at like Khabib, who lost his father, and it's bad enough losing your father, but to lose someone who was always in your corner, who did all the coaching with you. And this was the reason I said maybe Gaethje could win. But you see it in Khabib's emotion. It was obviously a hard camp. It was obviously hard to do without his father. And to go and win this, what else can you do to break? If that doesn't break the fighter, what does? So no, I think those discussions go out the window. People have to recognise how good Khabib is. There's all these ifs, ands or buts, but he's the GOAT. I think, for me, I always argued that GSP was the GOAT. I have my reasons for that. I can discuss that in another podcast. I'm a GSP fan, so it's biased. To be honest, it is biased. Obviously, there's the John Jones discussion, and it's hard to argue with John Jones. I mean, my only argument against it is obviously he's got his PED problems in the past, and I prefer to kind of have a guy that people could look up to, younger kids should be looking up to. And not to say I'm a big Jones fan, it's fantastic. I just used the word fantastic again. But he's really good. But I'll argue about that GOAT thing because of the things he's done in the past. There's always a question mark beside him, or an asterisk, or whatever the hell you want to call it. For me, Khabib is the best. One of the best, if not the best, to ever do it. And if you want to listen to someone who's a lot smarter than me, listen to guys like Luke Thomas talk about him. When they say things like, the way MMA is working now is guys are trying to perfect everything. They're trying to get as good as they can in every part of the game. So you gotta have your wrestling, you gotta have your jiu-jitsu, and you gotta have your striking. So that's what, you see most fighters. You go back a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, there was always like, even when you hear Bruce Buffer announcing it, he would always announce their style. Like, you thought this guy is a, Thai boxer or a Muay Thai style fighter, or this guy is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whatever. And they talk about their black belts and all that, and it was always that way. You have a guy who's a grappler and a guy who's a striker, or a guy who's, his game is Jiu-Jitsu, but now they all have to have a bit of everything. Khabib doesn't. Khabib hasn't got the best striking, hasn't got the most amazing jiu-jitsu. It's his wrestling, and people, it's just mad how people know what they know. They know what he's going to do all the time. He's going to set up his takedowns. Just try and stop it. There's no game, like there's no different game plan. And this is what they've all been. It's what his fathers told him throughout every fight. If we stick to the game plan, it's the same thing. It's just mad. They cannot stop it. It's insane. I would love to kind of see him stick around another bit, but realistically, kind of like Adesanya. For what? Like who? The lightweight division is great. You know, maybe you get to see him against Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler, who did really well in Bellator. Is he even good enough to take on the top boys in the UFC? I don't know. Like, I've seen him fight. He's a good fighter. But this talk of him getting a title shot as well, I think it's a little... You know, you've got some other fighters in there that have been, you know, making their statements, even outside of the top three. That division is stacked. So the talk of Michael Chandler posing a threat against Khabib, I don't think so. I'm glad he's in the UFC and it brings some interesting fights, especially now Khabib gone. There's some interesting fights coming up, which I'll talk about in a minute. But just on Khabib, Khabib retiring it's good for him. He should go retire, you know, live your life, and you see the emotion in him after the fight, which is clearly built up emotion. And like DC said in the commentary, he said a lot of this training for the fight and getting ready for the fight and all that was probably his way of distracting him from his father's death. So yeah, go enjoy retirement. He's done all he has to do. I know people are saying, you hear that a lot, the guys retire and then they attempted to come back in, but when you hear Khabib's reasons, makes you wonder, will he? Now you don't know, maybe in a year's time or when he gets a bit of a break away. He's still only young enough with no damage done. Forget about a little damage, there's no damage done to him. So he could return, you know, maybe for a big name fight, but he's right, go retire, you leave on top, you know. But people need to appreciate, myself included, need to appreciate what we've been able to see with Khabib. Because he is up there, you know, with your Jordans, your Ronaldos, your whoever the greatest tennis player is, I don't know. Tiger Woods, golf, all those guys. He's one of the greatest ever. But with him having retired, it leaves for some, you know, if the Sharks now are smelling blood, they're all going to start looking for that shot at the belt. And there's so many guys that stand a chance in there. You look at the rankings. Obviously coming up, you have, still hasn't been fully announced, but supposedly McGregor versus Poirier. One thing I don't want to hear is that fight is now going to be for the belt. Because I don't know, I just don't think it should be. I think maybe the winner of that fight fights the winner of another fight for, you know, the belt. But I don't think, because all the talk which I agree with, they were saying that the two guys wanted to fight at welterweight and then go and challenge Khabib, which is not right. You can't do that. There's enough guys there, like, we look at that entire division, guys like Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson, you know, these are all guys that deserve that shot as much as McGregor and Poirier. Poirier does deserve it, but you have to remember he lost to Khabib previously, as did McGregor. So, but McGregor comes and goes when it suits him. So it would be great to set up like a one night tournament or something like that, which they won't do. But it'd be interesting to see. I hope that fight happens with McGregor and Poirier, and then allow that winner fight somebody else for the belt. But don't make that fight a title fight, or an interim belt or whatever. Just, you know, set up another fight. Maybe set up Ferguson versus Michael Chandler. You could do that, and the winner of both of those fights then go and fight for the vacant belt. You could do that. Obviously Gaethje is still there, but I'm sure Gaethje wants a bit of time off. Or if you want to give Gaethje the winner of McGregor and Poirier for the belt, I don't know. But man, that division is exciting without Khabib. Obviously with Khabib it's great, but now you have so many options as your next champ. It's pretty exciting. But definitely people got to recognise how good Khabib is. But obviously now he's retired, so yeah, you got to recognise what we've been able to witness and how flawless he has been. Because you're never going to see that again. There's no way. You hear Luke Thomas talk about it, he breaks it down like really well about the things Khabib does to fighters, and he knows a lot more about the grappling side of things. But it's really interesting to listen to. But no, best of luck to Khabib. He's right to retire, and imagine getting that guy as your wrestling coach, you know. That'd be some opportunity for a team, but I'm sure he's going to do that back in Dagestan. Maybe AKA want to snap him up as their wrestling coach or something like that. Wow. I think that's probably what DC does, I don't know. But good luck to him, and man, there's some statement win. It's just interesting to see this lightweight division over the next while. Maybe, let's say Poirier fights McGregor. You could do Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. But then you have Ferguson sitting out. I suppose the best. I don't know. Michael Chandler versus Ferguson, Poirier versus McGregor. The winner fights each other. The winner of that fights Gaethje. I don't know, but it puts Gaethje sitting up for a long time. But then you throw Dan Hooker in the mix there as well, which you could do. He's ranked at number 5. You could very well go Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker, McGregor versus Poirier. I can't do Ferguson versus Gaethje again. I don't know. There's a lot to do. A lot of fun fights there. And I've said this previously, but go outside of the top 5, like you still have Charles Oliveira, Paul Felder, Diego Ferreira, Ali Kenta, Kevin Lee. That's all the way up to number 10. You still have some guys outside of that too. That division is unbelievable. But yeah, wow, Khabib, pure and utter class. But just that, yeah, people stop saying that Gaethje didn't show up. He showed up. He was beaten by the better fighter. Plain and simple. So yeah, that's my wrap up of UFC 254. Just gonna have a quick look at next week's card. It's kind of hard to look forward to anything coming up after that kind of a fight card. The whole UFC 254 fight card was brilliant. It was mostly finishes, bar 2, maybe 3 fights. It was mostly finishes. But next week you have UFC Fight Night, Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva. It's kind of a fun fight, you know. I think Anderson has said this is his last fight, which I really hope is true. It's well time he retires. I don't want to see him take any more damage, you know. Uriah Hall is not an easy fight for him either. But a fun fight too, you know. Two exciting strikers. You won't see any grappling in that fight. But I do hope it's Anderson's last fight, you know. Given this fight, it's a fun fight. It's not an easy fight, but it's a fun fight. Give him this fight and hopefully he rides off and, you know, really retires. He's another one of those guys who's one of the greatest ever. But just in the last while he's taken a lot of damage and you don't want to see much more of that. But this card is not bad, the full card itself. If Uriah Hall Silva in the main event, the co-main is Andre Fili versus Bryce Mitchell. I talked about Bryce Mitchell in one of my previous podcasts about how he's one to kind of keep an eye out for. It's a tough fight against Andre Fili. Very well rounded fighter, but Bryce Mitchell's jiu-jitsu is it's class. Just keep an eye on that fight for hopefully if he gets it to the ground, but a fun character too. That is a really good fight. You have in the middleweight division then before that is Kevin Holland versus Muradov, Mahmoud Muradov. Kevin Holland's an interesting fighter too. He's entertaining to watch. This for like a fight night, it's actually a really good card. 2 fights before that, you have a heavyweight fight between Greg Hardy and Morris Green. I like that fight a lot. 2 very heavy-handed guys. Morris Green is another guy that was on the Ultimate Fighter. Let's see if I can remember who he fought under. It was the season of Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whittaker, I think, were the coaches. Morris Green was on Kelvin Gastelum's team. I think he won that season, if I remember correctly. Bit of controversy on the season because he was doing a lot of drinking and smoking and partying while he was supposed to be training. But good fighter. He's got heavy hands, and I think, from what I remember, he's not bad on the ground either. Whereas Hardy's a really good striker, but lax on the ground a little bit. And then, first fight to open up that card, you got Bobby Green versus Thiago Moises. That's a really good fight too. Like, Bobby Green is he's had some interesting fights lately. I think he's on at least a 3-fight win streak, if not more. But that's a good card too. Might give a little prediction, because my predictions have been so good lately, considering I've probably gotten one right. But I see Bobby Green winning the first fight probably by TKO, I guess. TKO. Morris Green and Greg Hardy. That's a tough one. It's a good fight. I will go with Greg Hardy just because he's he's a very athletic kind of fighter for a heavyweight. He moves fast. But that's a hard one to call. To be honest, a lot of them are hard to call. But I think Greg Hardy maybe. I see Kevin Holland taking the middleweight bout against Muradov. Kevin Holland might win by knockout or TKO as well. I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell in the co-main. Twisting Andre Feeney's head off maybe, but some sort of a submission. He'd win by submission. In the main event, I hate to say it, but I see Uriah Hall probably beating Anderson Silva via strikes, whether it's a knockout or TKO. I hate to say that, but I just think Anderson Silva is unfortunately in the game a bit too long. But that's not a bad card either. Usually what the UFC do is you get a big card like we did this weekend, UFC 254, and then you get kind of a quiet one like that's not great, but that's a really good card. Especially if you're a hardcore fan. It's a really good card. But yeah, I think I pretty much covered everything. I got through it a little quicker than I thought again. But hopefully you all enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the fights at the weekend. Probably get another podcast out before the fights at the weekend, but we'll see. I'll surprise you maybe. Just keep liking, sharing, like I keep saying, subscribing, whatever else. Follow me on all my pages. Plenty more stuff to come I'm working on. So yeah, hope you keep enjoying it, and see you next time.